Hey everyone, welcome to the first ever episode of Farm Fact Friday there. I'm Derek LeClaire and I'm here with Tanya Franklin.
Hey guys, we're going to get started today and we're going to explain a little bit about what the goal is of Farm Fact Friday. Throughout the season, Derek and I are going to be following 4 different crops so that you can see things on the farm from start to finish. So Derek is going to be following processing tomatoes and IP soybeans, and I'll be following corn and asparagus. You will see time to time that we're going to show up at different farms so that you can see what's going on in Ontario at different crops, and we'll have special guests on every once in a while. First, we
Our
wanted
go-
to really start with what ag means to us. So, Derek, why don't you take it away?
well, I've born and raised on the farm and actually still live on the same farm that I was born on. Actually, my dad's 55 years old and he hasn't moved in 55 years, as he likes to say. So I've just always been around farming as a kid, always wanted to go for rides with dad and my dad quite often talks about when we were in the field and my mom's vehicle would pull up to the field, I would start crying and get upset because that was means it was time to go home to have a nap. So agriculture to me in a nutshell is it's more than a career, it's a way of life. So it's in my blood and it's what I love to do. How about you, Tanya?
Mm-hmm. So, ag to me, when I think about agriculture, I think about the faces of the people that are involved, the faces of my mom and dad, the faces of my siblings, our neighbors, our family, our friends, my previous customers when I was an agronomist. You know, the things that pop into my head are the first time my dad let me drive the John Deere by myself, and the time my mom taught me how to back up a wagon, and endless hours in the field side by side with my brother and my sisters and my mom and my dad, hoeing, topping, suckering, you name it. We were out there all summer long. farmers have been Farmers, it's a really unrewarding job sometimes because we're feeding a world that doesn't understand what we're doing, and they're very critical of how farmers do their jobs without truly understanding what it takes. And the passion that these farmers have is something that I can't relay over a video and I can't relay through this video, but it's something you feel. When you're in ag, you feel it. You're proud of everything that you have accomplished. You're proud of being able to feed the world. Even if there's no money in your pocket at the end of the day, you're still proud of everything you did. And farmers struggle constantly with weather and input prices and crop prices and labor, and it's a constant struggle, but at the end of the year they've accomplished something amazing, and then they go out and do it again.
And it's really
So like
cool
Derek
to
said,
sorry,
yeah.
Tanya, I was just gonna say it's really cool to see your hard work pay off throughout the year. Like you put a seed in the ground and watch it grow. So
Mm-hmm.
you get to
Yeah,
visually
exactly.
see your hard work pay off uh, and harvest your labors at the end of the year, essentially, right? So.
Mm-hmm. And when you go into the grocery store and you see that, for you guys processing tomatoes, when you see the label on the shelf and you know that your tomatoes are probably in there, I bet you that's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you know all the hard work and care and passion that went into it. So it's it's an honor to have people enjoy our hard work and enjoy the beautiful taste of tomatoes. So at least I think so. Oh, and it's a lot about community too, right, Tanya? Like that's like you said, you can't really explain or experience it over a meeting or over the computer. You kind of have to be there and live it because it's small town community neighbors helping neighbors and people having each other's backs and it's a pretty unique and cool experience. I don't know too many other jobs that have an experience like that.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it's always cool when you go to the grocery store, and my husband won't go with me anymore because I stop and talk to everybody because I know everybody that's
Hmm.
there.
Well, yeah, being an agronomist for 10 years, that's a lot about relationship and sales, right? Like personal, like meeting people in person. So yeah, I'm sure you run into a lot of old customers or old friends. So
Mhm. Yeah, it's always pretty neat.
no, for sure. And did you want to give a quick background of yourself, like where you went to school or what's your experience in agriculture in the industry?
Sure. Yeah. So I grew up on a tobacco farm in southwestern Ontario. Over the years, we have grown, oh boy, corn and beans and oats and rye and sorghum, um, but also tobacco, bell peppers, cherry hot peppers, squash, pumpkins, zucchini, sweet potatoes, tomatoes. I'm sure there's asparagus. I'm sure there's a bunch that I'm missing. We have done a lot of things on our farm and tried a lot of different things. Um, Working in that environment, hands-on, 40-degree heat or hotter. You know, at some point I decided I was a bratty teenager and decided I didn't think I wanted to be part of that anymore. So I went to school. I have a degree, an honors degree in business economics and finance, and very quickly realized that Toronto was definitely not cut out for me at all. I miss that smell of fresh dirt in the spring, and I miss the smell of diesel exhaust in the summer. And it's just something you can't take out of who you are. So I came back to the farm and then started my professional career at FCC at Farm Credit Canada. I was there for a year and then transitioned into the ag input side where I was an agronomist for the past 10 years, and I worked specifically with specialty crop farmers. So that was a ton of fun.
Okay, and I'm sure
How about you?
a great experience too, right? Working with all them crops and meeting all those people, right? All the farmers and connections you've made is probably very valuable today.
It is, and I miss them all.
But I guess for myself there, I graduated from the University of Guelph Ridgetown campus with an associate diploma in agriculture in 2017, and then about I think the week right after I wrote my last exam, I started working for the local co-op there just as a general laborer. So that was more outside. So that was helping farmers get their fertilizer, seed, chemicals, so and delivering out products or equipment that farmers need. So that was a pretty cool experience, and I think is important because you get to see the background stuff before you work your way up into the office and more to the decision making, right? You kind of know what goes on out on in the fields and out in the yard. You can kind of appreciate and understand things better when you're in the office kind of directing people. So I did that in the spring of 2017, and then for the same company, different location, I got on full time as a customer service manager. So that's more in the office, kind of receiving orders over the phone and directing uh, people like where to deliver fertilizer or seed. So kind of more on the logistics side, which is always fun. So, and then I did that for a year and a half, and then for then after that for another year and a half to 2 years, I worked for another local ag retailer as same position, customer service manager. And fun fact, actually, the retailer I worked at is where Aaron spent, I think, close to 10 years of his career. So we kind of come from the same area, which was cool. So, and then and then after that, about a year ago now, I worked for a local seed company. This time of year, they're doing a lot of their bagging of their corn and soybean seed. So they get their orders in the fall, and then they know how much they have to process or produce. So that's what I did this time last year, and then April 5th I started with Deveron. So quite the I'm into a handful of companies now, so getting some experience. So
Yeah, so this is kind of a cushy job for you.
yeah, and the seed company I worked for was shift work too, so that was a little bit different. The 11 to 7, I'd never done that before, so that was interesting.
Oh, yeah, no more slugging bags of seed
No,
for fun, but maybe not at
yeah.
work.
Well, you're not supposed to slug bags of seed, but when the machines screws up or something and you have to pick them off the ground and sometimes sweep up some seed, that's always fun. So you get your exercise. So so, so
So
I
I guess
think
we can kind of, jump into our next topic a little bit. We're gonna talk about what's going on the farm right now. So we're gonna start with Derrick this week. So you can go ahead and take it away.
okay. So I guess what's going on with the farm right now is like this time of year, obviously there's not a whole lot of field work going on. So a lot of times farmers are doing planning, or I know I've been doing with Aaron a bunch of profitability mapping. So farmers are basically reviewing how they did last year and making plans for this upcoming season. And then also a lot of shop work as well, because machinery breaks down when you, of course. So this time of year, you kind of change the oil in your tractors and change belts on harvesters and just general stuff like that. So that's kind of what Dad's been busy with. And then also with tomatoes, I can explain this a little bit throughout the year, but they're priced differently than your commodity crops like corn, soybeans, and wheat. So it's each company is different, and the way you negotiate a price is different as well. So we've been doing a little bit of that as well, but I think they've actually settled a price between the local company we grow for, which is pretty good, because last year it took longer than this. So our price is settled. So now we start planning how many acres we're going to have and which fields we're going to plant them in and everything. So basically this time of year in a nutshell is the maintenance side, like your repairs and kind of big maintenance projects, and also planning for next season and looking back on last season to see what went well and what could be done different. So do you have anything to
So
add
in
here?
the processing tomato world, you're negotiating prices. Are you guys signing contracts? And then how do you make decisions based off those contracts?
Yep. So each grower has a contract there. Now, the way the company we grow for at our family does it is each grower negotiates, or the growers as a group negotiate as a whole to the processor, where there's some companies where each individual grower negotiates differently, and that's where you can kind of get into hot water, because I could be negotiate for, it kind of turns into a bidding war for the company, like the factory, because let's say I'll grow it for X amount of tons, but dollars a ton, but Tanya will say, well, I'll grow it for $10 cheaper, but I'll take more acres. So that's when it kind of gets into a bidding war, and that's in my opinion, I don't care for that method, and I'm glad the company we grow for, all the growers kind of have the same mindset. We're all in this as a team, not as individual. But whereas with commodity markets, you just go, like, I can look up online this morning and say, okay, corn's trading for so much a bushel for this month, so I'm going to book so many bushels, or put an offer in for a little bit higher and hope that the market hits. So whereas tomatoes, it's an actual signed contract where you have to deliver so many tons at a certain price. So every grower in the factory has a different contract specifically to how many acres they grow and how many tons, but the price is all the same for all the growers, at least for the company we grow. I know some of the other companies do it the individual, like I just mentioned, but so
Mhm.
and then be, with the contract, there's certain things you have to do, like you have to send in field maps with the number of acres for each variety, and because there's two main varieties we grow for the factory we're with, and you also have to you're basically at the mercy of the factory, because they're the ones buying the product. So it's not like with corn and beans, you can just go out and say, okay, well, it's dry today, I'm going to go plant today, or I'm going to harvest today. Whereas they, like, we'll probably be getting this shortly there. My dad will shortly be getting it, I bet, is we get a schedule there. So they say it's kind of plus or minus a few days. It's not exactly right, because you can't tell from Mother Nature, but it'll say on May 15th, plant this many acres of this variety picked up at this greenhouse. So it's very direct and specific of the rules you have to follow. And same with the harvesting as well. They give you a delivery schedule, and you have certain days where you have 4 loads at this time, and you have other days where you have 5 loads at these times. So you're kind of under the thumb of the processor. They kind of set the rules, and you have to follow them, or else you lose your contract, right? So it's not, you don't get to enjoy the flexibilities of corn and beans, where it's kind of just get the crop in whenever you're able to, or what's convenient for you. It's more scheduled with tomatoes. So a lot of planning goes involved in that this time of year.
Mhm. And with that planning, does that include soil sampling?
My dad tells me years ago the factory used to pay to get soil sampling done for their own records, but they don't do that anymore. So it's not mandatory that you soil sample. But I know that Dad likes to soil sample just to know what he's working with there. And actually, that's leading into the discussion we were planning on having today. So, but this, so because soil sampling, I like to think of soil sampling in practical terms of like getting a blood test, right? If you go to the doctor and say, there's something wrong with me there, chances are, depending on what it is, they might say, okay, let's go for a blood test so they can see if anything sticks out on the report that kind of this the standing out like a sore thumb, saying, okay, I think that's causing the problem, or that is limiting your health type thing. So same thing with a soil sample. If your crops are performing poorly in certain areas, or bad as a whole, that you can take like a quote unquote blood test of the soil or a soil sample and say, okay, this nutrient is causing my issues, or it could either be too high or too low. Same with a blood test, right? You could have some attributes that are too high or too low. So that's how I like to think in practical terms of a soil sample. So,
I
so like,
agree. Here at Deveron, can you show us some different examples of different types of soil sampling that you might do on your farm?
yep. So here, I'll just share my screen here. Let me know when you can see it. So make sure I'm not just talking to nobody here.
I can see it.
Okay, perfect. So there's two with Deveron there. I believe the two primary methods of sampling we do is grid and zone sampling. So grid is this example here. This farmer, they wanted a 5-acre grid. So with grid there, when our Deveron collectors go to collect the soil in the field, they overlay a 5 acre grid over top of the field, or 2.5 acre is another popular choice for farmers. So in this scenario, the farmer wanted 5-acre grid. So when the collector went to the field, they put a 5-acre grid on the field and then sampled. These are each 5-acre grids there. It's kind of hard to see in this picture because there's not a physical grid, but this is where the samples were taken from.
I can only see the folder that says soil sampling. I can't see the
Oh,
picture.
oh, okay. Yep, wrong one then. Is
Oh,
that better?
there we go.
Okay, yep.
Yep.
Too many screens, can't keep track. So yeah, so like I was saying there, when the collector went to the field, they would have overlaid a 5-acre grid on this. It's a 50-acre field. Whoop, wrong one there. It's a 50-acre field, so 10 zones, or 10 grids, pardon me, so they would have put a 5-acre grid over top of this field, and then this is where the grid is. Kind of like I was saying before too, it's hard to tell based on this picture because you can't physically see the grids, but I have another picture that would show that differently, or would show it better. So you might be wondering what these numbers mean there. When you get your soil test results back, how do you know which one's which? So this is a picture of the soil sample report that come with this here. So if you look here, so this is point number 1 down here, this red dot. So point number 1, that's this is all the attributes of that one there. So it has 3.1% organic matter, 73 parts per million bicarb, phosphorus, and on and on and on there. So that's how you correlate. So the farmer would look at their grid map and say, okay, point number 1, and then say, okay, it's very high in potassium, so I don't need to put any potash on there. And then it's very low in sodium, so maybe we have to add some sort of salts or something to that there. So and to make things easier, this particular lab, the A&L labs there in London, they give you kind of a legend at the bottom to kind of direct you. So this is just based off of their base measurements there, like what they use for reference. So that you can see the legend down here. So for example, as I mentioned, potassium VH is very high, which is, yeah, right there. So very high. So meaning the optimum, it's over the optimum level for that nutrient. So you don't really need to add very much or maybe not at all add any potassium to that section of the field. Whereas at sample number 4, if I go back here, so sample number 4 is right here. It is showing a medium test for potassium. So maybe you just might have to put a little bit there, but it's not a huge issue. Like, for example, phosphorus, both of these are showing a low. So you might have to, it'll be worth your investment to put phosphorus in that spot. So, and then down here, this particular farmer, they're planning on planting tomatoes there next year. So when the farmer requests the soil sample, they can request recommendations from the lab. So they're hoping to get 50 tons of tomatoes, which is actually pretty good yield. So that would be great. So this, according to these sample points and these nutrient levels, this is what the lab is recommending that you put on for each nutrient. So, and that's just an average there. Like, you don't have to follow that set in stone. Your independent agronomist might have an adjustment of what they want to make, but that just gives you an idea of what you should be putting on in each of those spots. So each of those grids. So, and then, so that's grid soil sampling. So the second most popular method I think we use here at Deveron would be zone. So zone is a little bit different than grid. Grid is just when the collectors go to the field, they put a 5-acre grid over top of the boundary of the field, where zone is more specific. So I actually drew these zones for the customer. So the same thing, they want 5 acres, but they want zones. So the purpose of zone is, well, I can show you an example of what I used to draw it up with, if it'll let me go there.
So the idea of a zone is to capture the variability more than a grid.
Yeah,
like a grid
exactly.
a grid worked great for a flat field that was properly tiled, no slope, and was exactly the same from end to end. But rarely do we see fields that are actually like that, especially here in Southwestern Ontario. So a zone is a more accurate way to do a soil test, because you'll know where the bad zones and the good zones are, and then you can compare the results after you do that. So go ahead, Derek, show us how you made these zones.
So great point there, Tanya. That's a great point, because to what you were saying there. So this is an NDVI image, which measures when this satellite photo was taken, it measures the green material, the chlorophyll coming off of the plant from the satellite image. So this area here essentially isn't showing as much crop canopy or much crop density as this section here of the field. So to your point, Tanya, with a 5-acre grid, you might have part of your grid in the green section here and part of it in the red section here. Whereas with a zone, you can specifically draw out that red section from the green section and get more of a full picture of what the red and the green section is individually, as opposed to a mixture of both. So that's a NDVI image, and that's what was used to draw on that zone map. But you can also use, where is it here? I think I had one. So this is a yield map there. So a yield map, this was generated from the farmer's combine when they harvested. So red is low and green is high, which probably makes sense. And so you could with a good yield map there, this one's missing a little bit of sections there because they were using 2 combines, but with a good yield map, you can draw off of that as well. So you could say, okay, well, this section here, what's going on here? Is this a sand hill where there could be a nutrient issue or a pH issue? What's going on here? So let's take a look at the nutrients of their base versus this green section here. Okay, it really produced high yield this year. So what levels do we have that are good? So then maybe we can cut back on our fertilizer costs on next year, because we don't need it here, but we can take some from here and put it here to try to make the variability less for in terms of the nutrient. So
Mm-hmm.
so that's NDVI and yield. So I'll go back to this zone map here that was drawn off of the NDVI. So when our collectors show up to the field, they sample, what is it, Tanya, about 10 to 12 soil cores per sample type thing, or do you know roughly what the standard is?
It's going to depend if it's soil, if it's sand or clay, but typically 12 to 20 cores will fill a bag of soil.
So they would, in this 5-acre zone, and these aren't 5 acres exact. They're probably in the range of 4.5 to 6, something like that. But in this 5-acre-ish zone, they'll take the 12 to 20 cores that you were just talking about there, Tanya, and then mix it all up and put it in a bag, and then that gets sent to the lab as zone. So this would be zone 6, would say, on the bag. So those 12 to 20 cores represent this 5-acre zone, which is zone 6. So then you can take a look when you get your results and say, okay, this area here, and I actually have the results. So we'll say this is zone 6 right here. We'll use that as an example. I guess I'll have to use 1 to 4 because I didn't only put the first page. So we'll say zone number 1 here. So zone number 1. So if you take a look here, it looks pretty good. Like everything's like phosphorus is good, potassium's medium, magnesium is medium. So they might just have to put their standard application rate on there, what they would normally do. And then if we go to, for example, we'll go back to, where is it here? Zone number 4 here on the kind of the south end of the field. Zone number 4, it has it's showing high magnesium, so we might not have to put as much K-mag or something on there, right? So it just kind of gives you an idea of what you're working with and what the soil looks like. So. And then this customer here next year, they're hoping to they're planning on planting grain corn that gets sent for ethanol. So they 200 bushels an acre. So that's their yield goal. So based on these numbers for each point, this is the recommended nutrient additions that the lab recommends you put for that each individual point. So, and then once the farmer gets these results back, Deveron there, they make what's called a map book. So it kind of combines the soil zone or grid and the report and kind of puts it all in one in a picture here. So the zone map here. So this is K, which is potassium. So this is showing, if I zoom in here, so this was zone number, I think this was zone number 4 down here. So it has, with the orange there, it has the parts per million is 119.5 to 127.5, and that represents 15 acres because that would combine multiple zones. So with this, the grower could send this to their agronomist or their ag retailer and say, okay, can you make me up a fertilizer prescription based on this? Because these areas here, the dark green that have around 135 parts per million, won't need as much potassium as the red areas here, which only have 20 to 93 parts per million. So this kind of shows that the field, it's not the most efficient to treat the whole field the exact same, because this back part here has a lot different potassium levels than this front part here. So it would be, if you were just to use a blanket rate of potassium, you'd be putting on more than you need here and not enough here. So you kind of allocate those resources to where you need them, and maybe and it might work out too that your soil test levels are pretty good for that nutrient, so you might not need to use as much fertilizer as you originally planned on. And with the price of fertilizer these days, that's an important part of your budget, right? So
Yep. And if you had done just one bag of soil for that entire field, you wouldn't have captured any of this variability, and maybe you would have been significantly over applying or significantly under applying different rates because you don't understand the variability and where it should go. And like you said, with crop input prices this year being as high as they are, you want to make sure that every dollar you're spending counts and that you're using it most efficiently. So without a soil sample that shows this kind of variability, you really have no idea. I call those a shotgun approach because you're basically just throwing stuff, on the soil, and you really have no idea how it's going to affect the soil or the crop that you're growing that next year. So things like this, these tools for precision ag that Deveron is working towards and helping farmers get better data and to make decisions has definitely improved the accuracy of fertilizer applications and tightening farmers' budgets a little bit better as well.
Mm-hmm. Because yeah, like shotgun approach, or another way I like to look at it is you're just kind of going in blind. You're just kind of covering up your eyes and just saying, okay, we'll just take a stab in the dark type thing, right? So.
Yep. And I don't know about you, but I'm not that good at guessing. I don't think I could
No.
take a look at the field right outside my window and know what's going on.
No, for sure. And like you said too, if you just do one sample per field, that's called a composite sample there. And I think to be anywhat viable, they want it to be at maximum 25 acres. So if I guess I'll share my screen again here. So these zones here are plus or minus around 5-acre zones, where a composite sample you could do up to 25 acres. So basically 5 of these zones would be combined into one sample. So if you go over here, you get this one, and that one, and some of the yellow, it might show, oh, my levels are for that side of the field is pretty good. Like they're right where they need to be. But at the front you have too much, and at the back you have too little. So
Mm-hmm.
even if you split the field into 3, if it's like a 75-acre field, it's you're still missing out on a lot of the variability, like you said there, Tanya.
Yeah. Great. Thanks, Derek, for sharing all that.
Yeah,
Next
no
week,
problem.
everybody, we are going to get a little bit more in detail about how to read a soil sample and what that means. And we're going to switch over to asparagus, I think, and talk a little bit about what's going on in asparagus right now in Ontario.
Yeah, that's I'm pretty new to that crop there, so I'm looking forward to seeing what you can teach me and the rest of the group there, Tanya.
Sounds good. Thanks for tuning
Yeah.
in, guys. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, take care, guys. Have a good one.